reacting to The Lonely Scrapyard. I haven't done this episode yet, and I thought, what the heck, I'll do Gordon's Fallout, hopefully on Saturday. I might have to make the video quick, because Saturday I'm going to the film festival. So, I do not know Thomas and Friends, Mattel knows everything, and let's go.
If an engine were to come through Edward's station, they'd never know that Diesel was hidden at the back of the carriage shed, silent as a mouse, and listening closely to the outside world for those who might come to take him away, back to the scrapyards.
Sorry guys, I think this is
Edward the Blue Engine had been kind enough to let Diesel stay in the sheds for a few days after learning what Diesel had been through at the scrapyards. Edward was a kind engine with a big heart, especially when it concerned scrap.
Oh, I know what this is. Okay.
Edward and Diesel spent many nights together talking about scrap. Edward tried very hard to build up Diesel's confidence and felt that he was making great progress. I know it is hard, Diesel, but I promise to do my best help you face your fears, Edward often told Diesel. No one has ever tried to help me like you have, Edward. Thank you. Edward remembered how pitiful Trevor had been before he was saved from scrap, and felt a similar responsibility to Diesel.
Oh.
But Edward knew that this situation was far different from Trevor's, and started to worry. If Diesel didn't return to the scrapyards, Edward thought, the scrap dealers would start looking for him, which could place Diesel and the railway in a lot of trouble. Edward knew the kind of people who owned scrapyards. They were rough and rude, to be sure, but they were also greedy and would do anything to keep the smelters going, even if that meant traveling halfway across the island to find a single diesel engine. More engines to haul scrap meant the smelters could turn a greater profit. Edward had begun to worry so much about this that he was not running as well as he could. One afternoon, Edward puffed slowly down the line with his last good strain for the day. He was very tired. His driver and fireman were becoming concerned that soon he would need to go to the works to be looked over.
Hope they don't scrap him.
As Edward set down his trucks, he let out a long sigh. Edward, this cannot continue, his driver said sternly. All this worry over Diesel has run you down. You're barely making steam as it is. Perhaps we need to send Diesel back to the scrapyards. Edward secretly agreed with his driver, if only to save Diesel from a worse fate, and he was feeling worn out too. Diesel had become a burden and a very hard secret to keep. Reluctantly, he conceded. That settles it then. We'll handle this. You stay here. Edward's driver and fireman walked over to the carriage shed to tell Diesel the bad news. Edward instantly regretted his decision. What would happen to Diesel now, he thought. Suddenly, Diesel peeled out of the shed in great protest. I can't go back. I can't. You cannot stay here forever, Diesel. You must return, said Edward's driver. Says who? Diesel said.
Oh no.
Oh, I see, Diesel scoffed. Edward's heart sank as he saw a look of utmost betrayal on Diesel's face. I'm sorry, Diesel. It's for your own good, Edward cried, tears forming in his weary eyes.
Edward.
Without another word, Diesel crossed angrily over the points onto the main line and was soon out of sight.
Diesel.
Edward didn't know what to think or what to say. His driver and fireman did their best to console him, but Edward felt dreadful. The Next day,
They have to
Edward
understand.
drudged down the line. He didn't feel well at all. He could not stop
This is
thinking
so
about
sad.
Diesel and how he had gone against his promise, even though it was for the right reason. His driver and fireman were worried. "Cheer up, Edward. Diesel will be fine." "I hope so," Edward sighed.
This is sad. I'm already hating this. Sorry if I'm a little quiet, guys. This is just really sad. Okay, everything just went quiet. Why?
Edward arrived at the harbor and uncoupled from his trucks. He dreaded going back to his station, knowing that Diesel had once been there safe and sound, but was now roaming hopelessly looking for someone who could help him where Edward could not. Then Edward looked over into the sidings and saw a train of wagons ready to be taken to the scrap yards for unloading. This gave him an idea.
Oh no.
"Sir," he called to the foreman, "who is taking those trucks?" The foreman looked at his timetable. "Bear is taking those," he said. I just talked to Bear," Edward lied. "I'll be taking him instead." The foreman and Edward's crew all looked very surprised. "Have you made the necessary arrangements?" the foreman asked. "Yes, we have. All is arranged." The foreman nodded his head in approval and left Edward and his crew alone. "What's the meaning of this, Edward?" his driver asked. "I promised to help Diesel. I must talk to him. I must. Pulling this train is the only way I can get into the scrap yards to see him." Edward's driver and fireman reluctantly agreed.
He's willing to get in
Soon
trouble.
Edward was out on the main line, heading to the scrap yards.
Let's hope Diesel will
The
forgive
sky was getting
him.
dark, and a fog was beginning to settle around them. Edward hadn't been on this part of the island in a long time and felt a little scared. Odd shadows loomed over them as the moon rose overhead and the owl hooted in the trees. Edward began to hear whirring and buzzing in the distance and knew he was getting close. He approached a signal gantry guarding the entrance to the scrap yards beyond. A harsh voice blared of the speaker. "Who are you?" the voice asked. I'm here to deliver this scrap." "We don't allow steam engines here." Edward gulped. He had forgotten that only the diesels came here. Steam engines only came here to be scrapped. But Edward had to see Diesel and became desperate. I meant that I was delivered with the scrap. To be scrapped." The voice hesitated for a moment. "Very well. I'm sending an engine to fetch you. Leave your crew here." Edward's driver and fireman could not believe it. "What are you doing?" they bleated. Edward shushed them and asked him to drop his fire to complete the illusion.
I don't like this.
A diesel that Edward had never met came and coupled to him. As they entered the yards, Edward could see mountains and mountains of twisted metal rising before him. As they got closer, the fog lifted, and he saw the outlines of old, rusty engines, their spirits having escaped their hollow shells long ago. Edward was placed into line with the old engines.
is he doing?
Soon he was alone, cold and frightened in the lonely scrapyards. Hello? Diesel? Are you there? Edward whispered. There was no answer, only the wind rustling by. Diesel? Edward said more loudly. A scruffy-looking workman called from a nearby shed. That old black Diesel, he ran off a long time ago. Haven't seen him since. Oh no, Edward said to himself, his eyes widening. He realized that he made a terrible mistake. Diesel was nowhere to be found. His big heart had gotten him in a lot of trouble. Soon men were walking over with blowtorches and hammers. Edward was more frightened than he had ever been before. Another steam engine for scrap, I see. Pity, I like the blue paint on this one, said one of the workmen. The blowtorches were lit and raised close to one of Edward's buffers. He could feel the white-hot flames searing into the metal. It was excruciating. But then the pain ceased as soon as it had started as a spotlight flashed on the walkway above. That is quite enough, boomed Sir Topham Hatt. Sir, Edward said, tears rolling down his face in relief. Edward, I know you would do anything for your friends, but this is going a little too far. Sir, I only wish to joke to Diesel. Yes, I know. Perhaps at this time you did just that. Diesel rolled into the siding where Edward sat. Diesel, Edward cried, I am so glad to see you. Diesel looked worried. I'm glad to see you too, Edward. I wondered for a while after I left your yard, but something stirred within me. I could hear you in the back of my mind, so I decided to see Sir Topham Hatt and tell him about my situation. It was then that we heard that you would come here to find me. I wanted to apologize for not keeping my promise, Edward said. But you did keep your promise, Diesel smiled. How? When we heard you ventured here, I knew I needed to face my fear and rescue you from Scrap, just like you did for Trevor. Edward was overcome with gratitude. He didn't realize that the pupil had become the teacher. Let's get you home, said Sir Topham Hatt. Together, Diesel and Edward traveled the long distance back to the station.
That was the most intense episode!
Diesel placed Edward in the sidings and started to leave. Where are you going? Edward asked. Back to the scrapyards, of course. Sir Topham Hatt said that he wants me to work there for a while. He's bought 2 new twin diesels to run the scrapyards, and when they come, I'll be allowed back.
That was the most intense episode. I thought they were actually going to scrap Edward.
As Diesel spoke, Edward heard a confidence in his voice that hadn't been there when he found Diesel hiding in the shed all that time ago. And fell asleep that night with a feeling of relief that he had made a difference in Diesel at last.
Why didn't his driver and fireman try to stop what was about to happen? I'm sorry. Oh, that was an amazing episode, and I will see you all in the next video. Adios, everybody.